For early access plus exclusive content, facilitated discussions, live one-on-one Q&As, and more, become a patron at patreon.com/BrucePoinsett. Welcome back to the Blacktastic Adventure, a virtual exploration of Oregon's Black diaspora. I am your host, Bruce Poinsett, and on today's episode, I speak with Karma Rivera. With her clever, edgy lyricism and righteous stage persona, Karma has established herself as one of the rising stars of the Portland hip-hop scene. Born in Chicago, the American rapper and songwriter's musical catalog is filled with catchy anthems, bold lyrics, and vibey hooks with elements of Latin music and R&B that complement her primarily rap musical style. Refreshingly confident with an irresistible I'm doing me energy that keeps you hitting the loop button on her tracks, Karma's witty, refined, high-speed wordplay and star power have become her recipe to independent success. So my conversation with Karma was great. I remember first seeing her back in about 2015 and just, immediately just being grabbed by just, again, her persona, her confidence on stage. And then it's like, oh man, she's got lyrics too. So, talking with her was great, not just to, get a background on her story and her journey as an artist, but also, talking a little bit about politics, talking about business, talking about identity and representation and tokenization. And, we just had a really, really good conversation, really deep conversation. And I'm excited to share it with you. Check it out. Yeah, so Karma, thank you for coming on the Blacktastic Adventure this afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's a beautiful Sunday.
Yeah.
The weather is
yeah, so you just got done shooting a new video, right?
Yeah. I'm still recovering from that because, man, it was, we spent 3 days out in the Oregon coast and just this really took me out of my comfort zone for sure. So, and I'm still recovering from that. My body is still sore, but yeah, it was a blast. I haven't shot a video or even done anything of that kind of project in particular in over a year. So it felt like it was the first time. And when you do shit for the first time, it's it's so much work and it's just a lot of winging it and just trying to, figure out things on the fly. So while also trying to be the artist and perform and trying to make the video look good as possible, it is the hardest thing, but this is what I chose to do.
I mean, there's got to be worse places to get back into the flow than the coast, though, right?
Oh, it was great out there, and it didn't rain, so I was very grateful for that because or else it would have been harder and more frustrating. But we got some good days in, and we got some good footage, so I'm excited for that drop.
Yeah, that's what's up. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So, you're a native of Chicago, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you move to Portland? Out of curiosity.
Now I've been out here for 15 years.
Wow.
So I came out here high school, and I didn't go to So I've been here. I'm 31 years old. I've been out here for a minute.
Yeah. Can you just talk about growing up in Chicago and how I guess it's helped you kind of? I'm always interested for people who've moved out here, especially because Oregon's just this. I don't know, it's a I've grown up here, but I talk to more people. And it's realize how weird of a place it kind of is. But yeah, can you just talk about growing up in Chicago and then how that's kind of influenced how you see and kind of move through Portland and Oregon?
Well, I was born in Chicago and spent the first 15 years of my life in Chicago. So it was just I kind of was already automatically exposed to this unconscious display of Blackness because I grew up on the West Side, North Londo neighborhood, 99% Black. There was a few Puerto Ricans. We were the Puerto Rican family there, and there was a few others, but it was a predominantly Black neighborhood. I didn't see white people until I mean, rarely. Like, I mean, if my family wanted to go to downtown Chicago to do something fancy, like that would be the only time I'll see white people. Like Cameron Elementary, like all my teachers were Black. So, so my experience the first 15 years was more like, okay, you know, I'm in this, you know, environment that's predominant, like just Black. But also I'm like, you know, I fit in. I mean, they accept, like, they'll say, oh, she Black and Puerto Rican, instead of just saying like Black Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we're not like, people just wasn't, or I mean, I feel like it's till now. Now it's like a conversation, mainstream wise, universally now. But like when I was growing up, like people didn't really understand, you know, the identity complexes of like, as far as what it means to be Puerto Rican, or what, you know, like, is it Black, is it white, like, you know what I mean, like the complexity of it, it wasn't a conversation, wasn't talked about, and nor was it taught in school. Like private school, I don't even think private school they speak on it, but like my experience from going to a public school K-8, I didn't learn about anything like as far as like Afro Latina, or like even just, yeah, even we barely learned Black history, Black American history, you know. So it was, so basically my first 15 years, like as far as identity, was like, you know, I mean, in my household was like, you're Puerto Rican, you know, I'm the oldest of 6, and like all of my siblings were all racially like just different. I'm the lightest, my sister's dark skinned, my youngest brother's dark skinned, my other 3 brothers are light skinned. And it didn't matter like the shade or whatever. My great grandparents, like, you're Puerto Rican, you know what I mean? Like, you're Puerto Rican. Like that was, it wasn't about like color or race. It was like, you're Puerto Rican, your brother's Puerto Rican, you know, your sister's Puerto Rican, even though she's 3 shades darker than you. We're Puerto Rican. That's what you are, you know. And that's coming from like, you know, I come from a young family. They started early. Like my mom had me when she was 15, so it's like, it was just kind of growing up with my mom too, and watching her experience, because she's darker than me, so she's a Black Puerto Rican. So it's like, I feel like, you know, growing up in Chicago, it's like her interaction was more from a Black woman experience, a Black woman lens, you know. She more of that Black American woman experience, rather where my great grandparents were from the island. And so where they considered themselves as, you know, Afro Latinos. But my mom was born in the state, like in Chicago. So, you know, for all her life, she was Black, you know, to everyone else, she was Black. So that was her identity. She was like, yeah, I'm Puerto Rican, but she was like, I'm Puerto Rican, but people just didn't understand that. So she just kind of accepted that is. And like, just like in my neighborhood, like people just call us like, yeah, they Black and they Puerto Rican, she's mixed, you know? So that was just kind of that was the label that stuck with me for much my entire job, like till now, you know? So it wasn't until like coming to Oregon was when like the whole experience or the whole interaction just like completely, just with people in general, just was different, you know? I remember like first time coming up here, because like we were back and forth, because it was just like, it was too different. Like I know my mom wanted a new life for the family, but it was just like, just imagining coming just like West Side Chicago, that's all we know. I never been outside of West Side Chicago the first 15 years of my life. Like I don't know anything, you know, but I don't know. I didn't even know where Oregon was. Like we did not, you know, when you think of the West Coast, you think of California. Like we didn't know what that was. Like where's that? Where are we going? Like, you know, right. So it was kind of like our family was kind of like back and forth with it. So, you know, they're thinking like, well, we'll try it. We'll go, you know, see if, you know, you spend some time there, back and forth or whatever. And like, it was a transition. Like I had the hardest time. like I don't know what it was like. In Chicago, I was doing well, even like school, like I was like thriving. Like I was like, you know, like I was Shakur myself, like Shakur. It's the Invisaligners, yo. I was just like, you know, like, but like then starting school here, it was, and then also like moving out to a suburb, which was even worse. Not even worse. Well, yeah, it was in a way, as far as trying to figure like I think it felt like I knew who I was in Chicago, but when I came here, it was like the time since then, it's just like people, or either I'm educating people about my background, or they already placed these labels on me and I just have to accept that, you know what I mean, without having, you know, to do all the extra stuff. So big culture shock for sure, because it's like I just came from a neighborhood and environment that was all Black, some Latino, some sprinkles in there, to this like white super white, all I see is white people, even from like the airport to driving through neighborhoods. And it's like, it was different because I'm so used to like seeing, you know, Black people, Latinos working at the airport or working at businesses, or you know, that was the community. Like it was mainly those faces, to like going to the complete opposite. And then also having to learn these kind of new social norms, you know, like I guess when I was younger, I was considered out of pocket because I was just loud and very like confrontational, like, you know, because growing up from like, you know, I grew up like North Orlando, the Invisaligners, bro. I can't talk as slick like I used to. um Back in the neighborhood, like you had to like, you know, and being raised by a single mom, like it's like I was aggressive. You know what I mean? I was a little tough, you know, for a girl. Like for a girl, I don't like using that line, but like, you know, I was a tough girl. Like, you know, you couldn't talk to me any kind of way, or I would, you know, I would clap back, like snap back quick. So I always got into like, you know, just in these altercations with people, whether it was classmates or just like other kids in my neighborhood, because it's like I was battling against these stereotypes or just being perceived this way when I didn't, you know what I mean? It's like, how are you going to tell me who like, you know, it's just like, I remember like the first house we moved into, and we moved into Vancouver, Washington. And it was like these like, I don't know, I guess like this was like a low income, and well, not like a low income, but like middle class, like a working class neighborhood, and it was all white. So we're all white folks, and like that was like that's like the first time my family experienced like racism, like out loud racism. Like I don't know, I just remember like it was like no more than a week in the new house, and like we got into it with the neighbors, and and like I remember my mom just going at it with the neighbors, and then they just, and the husband called her a nigger and called called the kids niggers, and we're just like, what? Like this is like, you know, like we've never experienced that in Chicago, like that kind of racism, like as far as like, you know, like I mean, like just like, I mean, I could just tell that our neighbors, it just wasn't, they're used to being surrounded by other white people their entire lives. They don't interact with nothing other than other white people, right? So you could just tell. And so like even my mom was confused, like, wait, what? Like it was just one of those moments where just like, oh, we're in a different place, and we either assimilate, or we gonna we gonna really be beefing with the neighbors or something. Like it was just, that was my experience the first like couple years just being out here, and also like just learning the new social norms. Like I just like, it was just so different than the neighborhood back in Chicago. Like it was a complete opposite, other side of the spectrum type thing. And I felt like I just couldn't fit in, and I had to like change the way I talk, change some things about myself in order to like, I guess, I don't know, like act like white people. Like that was kind of like the thing, especially like going to a white high school. Like people always wanted to be like the middle class, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like that proximity to whiteness, like is I don't know, like people consider acting proper like act white, and I hate that. I hate like, oh man, like I hate like I would hear that a lot in high school, like, yo, just act like the white girls, be all proper. And it's like, why they get to be proper? Like, you know what I mean? Like can I not be proper the way I am? Like I'm just vocal about, you know, and I'm just vocal about some things, like, and that was just something I was constantly like just noticing all throughout. So it just took me like a long time to fully accept, you know, like where I come from and how I grew up in a house. Because luckily I was in a household that was like so proud for of where we come from, and just like and just like the traditional values that we have as a family. Like my great grandpa, like he had a house. He bought a house back in the 60s in West Side Chicago, Lawndale, and I grew up in that house, and it was just like learning, like I already knew who I like, because I because of my great grandfather. It's like I already knew my identity. I already knew who I was before, you know what I'm saying, I stepped out of the house. Like, like
Mhm.
he just kind of raised us, each of us, to be that way. It's like you're Puerto Rican, and like just kind of, so it's like nobody from the outside could really tell me, like, you can't tell me who I, you know what I mean, like you can't. So I was just like, I always, like, I was always myself. Like, even when I was trying to, like, assimilate to like, especially in high school, because you do get pressured into assimilating to, but I was just still, I just couldn't do it. I was
Mhm.
just couldn't do it. I was just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Like, I was just like, nah, I can't. I can't do. I mean, but somehow I was still like, people was still, all the white kids, everybody was still cool with me. They was like, oh, she a little loud, but
Mhm.
it wasn't. I think, and also just spending a lot of that time just educating people. Like, I think I didn't realize I was like telling people a thing that they never knew about or wasn't going to learn in school. So I mean, that too, I mean, it's exhausting, but it's also like, well, here's something new, like here's
Okay.
some, because I mean,
Became the history teacher.
yeah, because like in K through 8, like they don't, we barely like, and also it's, I know when I was like growing up, like going to school, like a lot of that stuff I wasn't like really engaged with, like, because all I see is these white men and these Indians, and like these are, you might have to edit all this like this part out. But like, I just, because it wasn't a reflection. It wasn't what my grandfather was preaching to me. Like, it wasn't, you know what I mean? It was a different, this history isn't like, it might be some, but it's not reflecting what I was taught in my house. So I was luckily, I was like, I had grandparents who like put us in the know before we was getting programmed in school.
Right, right. Out of curiosity, what high school was this?
Hudson's Bay High School, Vancouver,
Hudson.
Washington. I mean, it was considered one of those like the most diverse schools. So it was a little bit diverse. Like, there I did see like there's a for some reason there's a large like Polynesian community, Samoan. I like that. I didn't see that in Chicago. I didn't see Samoans and Tongans. That was different. So because I remember having like Polynesian friends heavy, and come to think about it, they just have big families, and they all go to the same school. They just go. But yeah, that was, yeah, Vancouver. And then I went to Washington State University. I did 1 year in Pullman. Couldn't do it. So I mean, but I still stayed in school though. So I just went to the Vancouver branch because they had opened a branch in Vancouver. So I was like, all right, that's perfect. I'll just live with my mom and then go to school and then work part-time. So that's how I was doing that for like a minute, and just, like trying to get the degree. Like, just get the degree. It took me a minute, but it was something that I was like, I'm not forced to do, but it was kind of like, oh shit, like my family is really, they they specifically said, you better come out of that place with a degree. You're not, especially my mom. Like my mom was already like, I mean, she wanted me to go to college more than I did. Like, I wasn't like an A+ student in high school. I was just trying to hit the grade that would get me to go to play basketball. Like, I wasn't like, like, like I was like a C average student, and I wasn't, I mean, yeah, sure. But I didn't really think I didn't really think I was going to finish school. It took me like 6 years, but, and I mainly my mom, because my mom was like, well, you ain't going to be living here if you ain't going to school. Like, you know what I mean? Just like, and also college is what introduced me to this whole new crowd of people. And that what led me to like discovering like, oh, I like music. Like, that's when I like I did not want it to be a rap. Like, rapping was not a thing for me in high school or before. In my like, I didn't get into rapping. I got to rapping way late. Like, it wasn't until I was like 21, 22. And Washington State had this like studio, and I didn't even know about the studio, but I was in the program where a lot of these kids will kick it, like they will stay after class until like to the nighttime, and they'll go to the studio. And the studio was like a multimedia studio, and there was like there's a sound recording studio, there was like video, they had all this equipment. And if you're a student, you know, that's available to you. So that's why people was there all through the night and day, you know, either, I don't know, we're making videos, just making content. And so I had a friend who was a rapper. She was a rapper from Portland. And so I was hanging with her. Like she was like my college best friend. Like, you know, like we had a couple classes together and we was always linked up. So I would just always, you know, she needed to ride to the studio and I would be the ride or whatever. So I would see, you know, how she went about recording and just like seeing all the like the back end stuff of it. So I was like, this is like a dope, like rapping was never like, I always view it as like one of those like, okay, like, you know, like I don't know. I never saw it as like a career, like a professional career. You know what I mean? Like,
was it like something you did at all, or it's just like freshly?
No. Like there was nobody in my family who rapped. Like I did have one cousin, he was a battle rapper, but that like I wasn't close with him. So it was like I mean, of course I was around music. Like when I was younger, when I was the one with the CDs. Like that's the Puerto Rican girl with the CDs, because like my mom would get these little mailer thingies and it's like 99 cents a CD. And I would just run them up. Like, and so I had all the CDs. I had all the Jay-Z albums. I had all the Nas. Because back then, this was like 2000s. Like East Coast rap was the thing. And then 50 Cent came and just took it all. You know what I mean? Like I was the girl with the CDs when I was younger, like at 9 years old with all these CDs and just like, you know, so I was very into music, but I wasn't spitting bars until my 20s. Like, you know, and I didn't even know, I don't know if it was a talent, like, I don't know. But one night at the studio with my best friend, she was like, I don't know, we just got into this argument. And like, I was basically saying, just acting all cool, just saying like anybody could rap. It's just like, and then she was like, all right, then you do it. Like, write a verse. And I didn't even know like how to go about it. Like I was watching, but I just didn't know like how do you, so I just started writing. And I just knew that like if I just write some words and make it like go with the beat, or just like write, like say it in a rhythm way, then that's gonna sound cool and they can't make fun of me. And then like, I don't know, I just came up with this verse and I just said it, and like I swear they all thought I was gonna be trash. Even I thought I was gonna be trash. Like I ain't gonna lie, because I was just trying to act cool. Like, y'all ain't gonna make fun of me. Like, you know, but and so I was figuring like, man, if I just act confident, and they gonna feel it. But I don't know. I was like very like, I don't know, it's going. But then when I end up performing it, they were like, yo, like you should I don't know, do like they were just like blown away. So I was like, of course, like when you get that response, I'm just like, So I just like kept writing. Like one thing I'm gonna do, I can write. Like that's I can definitely write. It was just like learning, like, because when you're in the studio, like it's a much different experience versus performing live. And I noticed that right off the bat, because just being around my homegirl, and like now that I figured I learned this new talent, I wanted to be in the studio even more, because I was really liking the whole process of it, of writing a song, putting together, like the process of like the whole production of it. Like that was like fun to me. Like I never had that exposure to that part. It was always the other end where you just listen to a dope song, right? Like you always, and what we see on, MTV was huge back then. So it was just like, I would see the spring break performances, and you just see that. But like I was actually having experience seeing it from the back end, like just watching this independent artist who's like, got a studio in her basement, and we just inviting people over, and then we're also on campus doing the same thing. Like I was seeing it from a different lens, and I felt like I was like, man, I feel like I could do this. Like, and so I just kept writing and just I wasn't just practicing, and I liked it. Like after classes, I bought my own equipment, my own recording equipment, because I just got tired of just bouncing around to like, and also I didn't want to spend all that time on campus. Like it's no. So, and then I didn't want to drive out to Portland to go to somebody else's studio. And also just like, I just don't like being on somebody else's time too. So I was like, I'm gonna save up some money and get my own recording equipment. And at this time, I didn't really know too much about like Portland's music scene. Like, only know like a few of my my homegirl that I was hanging with and like her crowd. But I wasn't I didn't know too much of it. Like back then, it was like very small, and it was I felt like I didn't like until it wasn't until I moved to Portland, like officially like moved to Portland, until I was really like getting to learn the scene and also learn like also meeting and knowing other rappers and artists that were
just for context, like when you that first like studio moment, like about like what year are you talking about with that?
like 2011.
2011. Okay. There's a. I only say that I don't just break into the story because I just remember like the first time I saw you had to be like maybe 2014, 2015, somewhere around then. So I'm just kind of like putting it together like that quick. But anyways, yeah, my bad.
2011, that moment happened in 2011 because I remember 2011, because that's when I was going to Washington State. And I just remember that like it was 2011, 2012, because I remember this when I was really inspired, because that's when Kendrick Lamar dropped Good Kid, Mad City. And I remember seeing Kendrick Lamar at a Portland show when he was like nobody, and nobody knew who he was. And I feel like that was like a few years back. So it was just like, oh shit, like I'm witnessing like, and that's nothing. Wait, I might have went a little bit too hard, but back in 2011, 2012 is when I started to see like actual like artists working independently. Like my view of a rap artist was like, you got to be signed to a label, you got to be in New York, you got to be in LA, you got to have a whole department of a team. Like that was my view of what a rap artist should look like, or that was the only, view of it I had. But back here, like in Portland, like I was just seeing all these, like I was starting to see like artists, like they were doing it, like they're pursuing it, but like also at this, like, I don't know. I mean, they don't need a label to make music. Like you don't need a label to make music. They were producing quality work without even dealing with a label or any kind of team. They were doing it themselves. So to me, that was just like inspiring for me. It's like, oh, I can do this myself. Like, so I went and just like saved up some money, was working part-time, going to school for it full-time. And so my free time was like, I was just writing, trying to get better at writing, but also like I said, recording in the studio versus performing live, it's like two different, like in the studio, it's more, not saying like, yeah, it's more, it's like, it's a different technique, And that was something that I just knew right off the way, because I was like always I was watching so many artists. When I would go tag along with my best friend to these studio sessions, I would see, the difference in how the way people record themselves, or the way they deliver their flow, or in how they set it. And so that was something that was just like, okay, because I feel like back then I was like, all right, that's like the hook. That's what people get more engaged with. Like that's what stands out the most when you rap. Because I was more like, I don't know if this because I'm a girl, but I was just more into the more like the visual aspect of it, like how you look when you say it, is the confidence there? Like, because I feel like to me, that's what like the best artists, I was just so into that aspect of like, dang, I could do this. I just gotta learn, to be the artist, to be an artist. If I got the talent, I want to learn to become the artist. You know what I mean? So that was just kind of like my thinking back then. And also I was just inspired by all these other artists that I'm seeing just coming, just putting in work in the studio, like literally watching my homegirl, like just do a 12-hour day from classes and then just go into her studio and just knock out songs. And I was just like, dang, like it's a whole job. And so just watching that process, just like, all right, I'm gonna do the same. I'm just do the same thing. And then so eventually I got my own stuff. I linked up like a few producers. They would shoot me beats. And I was like, I got to the point I was like, all right, I'm gonna record, I'm gonna record. Like I was already writing songs, already had a fucking cell phone full of raps. And I'm just like, all right, now like producers are serving me beats. Let me start let me start, let me see if I can create a song. And yeah, and so like that's really, I didn't get into it till way late. Cause I feel like when people start rapping, they start like at what, 13, 12, like you got people saying I've been rapping all my life. Like, and I didn't start till my 20s. Like I didn't know. And I didn't really see it as a like a actual career until my mid 20s, you know, when I started to see some kind of traction of it, you know. And then when people say, yo, you should keep going, well, yeah, I'm gonna keep going, you know. So it's like, so yeah, I've been at this for like a cold minute. Like, you know, it's funny because people gonna think I came out of nowhere, but like, nah, I have 10 years of experience of this. And I started from the ground up, like literally from the ground up, just learn like I don't come from a family of musicians. Like they see this, like, you have a degree, like go get a job, like like go, why are you doing this? And then, you know, it took a while to convince people that I could make this into a career, that this could be, you know, something bigger than what just, you know, I'm just rapping on a song, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like, you know, family didn't see that as something that like, they saw it as, why are you wasting your time, you know? But I was getting a good response as far as like the internet, you know, thank God the internet exists. Because I was started, you know, when I was recording songs, I started to put them up on SoundCloud. And there was this thing back then called what is it? The like the mixtapes, where we used to upload the mixtapes, that Piff.
Oh, yeah, that.
So I remember putting a mixtape on that Piff, and I had like 20 songs on there, and they're all original beats from this producer from Georgia, K Flame. And like, honestly, I just didn't know, like, again, no idea what I'm doing. I don't really have a team or anything. There's no one really guiding me. I just like to write songs, and I'm recording them, and then I'm going to put them out there on the internet and see if somebody give me some kind of feedback. And like, you know, it wasn't a lot of people, but it's like when there's people hitting you back saying this is good, it was just like, all right, I'm gonna keep going, right? And so I started doing like shows. I used to get hit up like these like local promoters, like super small promoters who like bars. Like I remember performing at Copper Penny once. Like,
yeah, what time? Again, what, just for context, like we're talking what? Because you said it started 2011, so was
2012, like 2013.
Okay.
That was when I was doing shows like at Copper Penny, like all these like bars that don't even exist today. And it was a different, like, I feel like it was just a whole different crowd, like, of people that was around too. Like, I remember, yeah, like I did a song, like I had a song with Mussolini. People probably don't even know who Mussolini is, but he's a Portland, like he's a big Portland artist back in like in the 2000s. But we did a song, and now it was like everyone was like, whoa, like everyone was, the response to that song was like, that was a song that made me more like known as far as like the underground Portland rap, like, you know what I mean? So I was like, all right, cool. Like, meanwhile, I think I graduated from Washington State in 2014. And by then I was officially like, 2012, 2013, I was in Portland. And so this was more, I was diving into Portland, like really learning the music scene. And I was more in the like the rap, underground rap. Like, I'm talking artists like Portland George, like this is Cool Nuts back in the like that. Like it was a much different, like I feel like it was a much different crowd of artists back then that was like doing this independently. And that was like also like just inspiration to also just like, all right, I'm gonna keep pursuing this while also, you know, doing a part-time gig, I've been working full-time for like a minute now. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna just do the 9-to-5 thing, and then while also spend pretty much the time when I'm not doing a 9-to-5 thing and pursue this music thing. So yeah, that's been my plan ever since to this day. Like, I'm still grinding, you know what I mean? So I didn't really get like, the audience grew 2015. 2015, 2014, 2015 area, around that time, right? 2015.
Yeah.
I was invited to do this cipher with three other artists, three other female artists. That was with Vital, Blossom, and I believe Aaliyah. Or
Yeah, Leah Zen.
yeah, Aaliyah Zen. Yeah. And we did a music video, and that's when like the audience, it went from a tiny small underground rap audience to, which was like majority male.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then when I did that collaboration with those artists, the audience just expanded. Like this was 2015 was when I was the kind of like, it was kind of like, all right, maybe I need to like start getting serious as far as like with branding, like with real artist development, and see where I can go with this.
All right. I mean, like I said, I remember first time, I think it was at like Kelly's Olympian or something, seeing you. And I just remember like my first take was just like, oh, just got bars, but also just like, like you were talking about with like the presence and like that confidence. Cause, I'm not like, I played in high school band, but I'm not, that's about the extent of my musicianship, but I do like, I don't know, I'm just like an observant person. So I try and like been in the studio with some people, I look at like that difference between, I don't know, I just like notice there's, especially with like performances, where there is something, I don't know exactly the word, but like, they always call it like the quote unquote it factor, right? And like, you want to, like when you see someone on stage, you want to believe, even if they're saying the most ridiculous shit ever, you want to believe that character, right? You want to believe that person. So it's like, when I first saw you, I was like, it was like, and that, if you had told me that you had only started rapping like a few years ago and you've got that presence, because I've heard people who got like the presence on the track, you go and see them live, it doesn't add up and it just feels weird. So, that flip side I think is important. But yeah, you talk about kind of like that's when things started blowing up.
As far as like the local level, like as far as like, I feel like I was making more of a name of myself in Portland.
Right.
But yeah, no, like I mean, I've always had the charisma though. Like I was always been like an entertainer. Like I think in high school, like I won like best sense of humor. Like I was always like, I always had that hype personality. Like I said, I was the Puerto Rican girl with the CDs. Like I was like, yo, you heard that new Jay-Z? Like I was always like, I've talked throughout my whole life. And that's the one thing I'm so grateful to start. Like I was born in Chicago because it is a very diverse city, but it's also very segregated. Like, yeah, you'll see every walk of life out there, but there's pockets. Like in this neighborhood is going to be that, and that neighborhood is going to be that, and that, so, and in everyday life, and it mixes because people go to work, right? And they gotta go to parts of town. So it's just, but also like I said, like I knew who I was before anybody could tell me who I am. You know what I mean? And that's just, I feel, because I grew up in an environment where, yeah, like, like I feel like everybody, you when you, I don't know, like when you come from an environment that's like I guess, I don't know, like if the way I look back at as an adult, it's like, yeah, I come from a low income, you see extreme poverty, you get like as a young kid, it's like you see that, and even for me, it was like, to me that was normal, like so that was normal. What I was exposed to was normal, and so you accept it as is. So I don't know, I guess you just kind of, I don't know, maybe I grew up a little faster than most people, but I mean, just being exposed to all walks of life and just seeing, just having experience that I did. I think it really, like, I don't know, I felt like I was able, like by the time I hit, in my 20s, like I was already like had this identity about myself that was just unconscious to me. It was, other people would press about it like, whoa, but I was just like I already knew this is me. Like this is me, and this is what you're gonna get regardless of the fact. So Yeah, Portland, thank God for Portland though. Like Portland gave me the development as far as like becoming an artist, because like here I am in 2015, just like seeing I was being exposed, like also collaborating more and just seeing how other people work. And it's just like, wow, here's a bunch of people that's, you know, chasing the same dream and they doing it independently. So it's like so that just got that to me was more like, oh man, like, you know, potential resources. Cause you know, like as you become like, if this is what you want to do, you know, you're gonna have to be open to learning. And that was something like, I think, you know, by going to school, like that was something I was just already in default, like I was already open to learning. Like I was learning a whole new way of life basically, like as soon as I got out of college. Like, you know, I had to learn to work in a corporate space, like
Mm.
you know, I got code switching down, you know what I mean? Like I had to like, so yeah, even by college, like I already, like I said, it's going back to like knowing who I am. Like, yeah, this is me, but I also understand the complexities of the outside world, and knowing the politics of how that is. But I had this ability to, you know, be able to get in these spaces because I know how to code switch. I know how to talk to this person. I know how to talk to that person because of being exposed to that. I think that's what Chicago did for me. Like it exposed me to people, and I wasn't afraid to talk to people. You know, I wasn't afraid to stick up for myself. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. You can't grow from North Lawndale and be afraid, because
Mhm.
you already seen everything that's like, well, most people will consider like, oh, like they couldn't handle that, you know? So it's like, what can you possibly throw at me? You know what I mean? Like people like, Karma, you're so strong. It's like, yeah, because I've seen shit. Like I've been through shit, and it molds you in a way to where it's like, yeah, this ain't gonna, you know what I mean? Like you become fearless in a way. And so especially like becoming a rap artist, like it's, for what I've learned, like this is more than just being a rapper. It's you're a business. Like you're a
Right,
whole
right.
and also like going through that. And it was like till 2015 where I was learning the business aspect. Like I was like, oh, this is way more than just like, by then I already had got down like the performing. Like I felt like I perfected like being a performer. I felt like I was so confident enough that I was so confident enough in my songwriting. Like I was like, man, can't nobody outbar me. I done did 2 ciphers for this town. Can't nobody outbar me. Like I was already confident in myself. Like like I said, I knew me before I knew me. I don't know, but like I feel like I already built that confidence early on, where it just allowed me to like just learn the business and learn how I can make this a career, and
Mhm.
hopefully, you know, go beyond local and go beyond region. How can I get to that very top? You know what I mean? And that's always been my mindset since 2015. So it was 2015 where I was just like, I'm gonna do this, and I don't care how what it's gonna take, what I gotta go through, and I'm gonna do this.
Right, right, right. So speaking of that, can you just talk about, 2015, things got serious. Like, can you talk about one, how you've kind of like navigated just that business of it, since then, and then also just like any like observations you have about like how the Portland scene has kind of like evolved since that time.
Well, in 2015, like, well, first of all, I think 2015 is when there was like this shift. Like I remember I was doing shows like at Copper Penny at these messed up, like just probably just these bars that were just like, I don't know, it was just like I was performing at bars and also in front of crowds that was just like, there was always a fight at the end of the night, like, or there was some always popping off. I remember one time I did a show, like I did a set at this one spot and it was in Southeast and it got shot up, like
Mm.
and then in 2015 is when I would start like being approached by like, you know, venues in this, like more in downtown Portland. I wasn't being hit up by promoters. I was being hit up by actual talent buyers. Um, People that worked like the Doug Fir, like the Mississippi Studios, those venues. but versus like, you know, some promoter that's just as aspiring promoter, you know, who's got this deal with the DJ, who got this deal with the bar, you know, you working with 4 different people just to do a set at this janky bar, you know? So that was like from 2015, it was like a transition for me. I went from this, I guess, super underground rapper, just, you know, and then now being noticed by a different crowd of people. And that different crowd of people, like it was, the audience was more white people. Like it was a shift in like, oh, where I was like, wow, there's white folks listen to me. Like they listen to my stuff. Like that was like, okay. And then yeah, so 2015, it was a thesis. That's what you're talking about, because it was Aaliyah. I remember the lineup. It was me, Aaliyah, and Gift the Gab. Gift the Gab was the headliner. And that the crowd, the audience was white people. It was majority white people. It was a little few sprinkles, but they're either artists or work in the event. But it was the audience, the majority audience, like who came to attend the show, was white folks. And I was like, cool. Like that was different, because I'm used to black and brown faces, because that was, you know, I guess for me, when I started doing more shows in downtown, that was just the crowd down there. That's what just my assumption was. But also just like, you know, talking with other artists, that was kind of like the ideal thing to do. It's like, you want to perform in downtown Portland, you know, that's gonna open, it's just gonna expand the base and just introduce you to a whole different new audience.
I imagine like the flip side of that is, you know, the new audience, and specifically like white Portland audience, you know, brings in other kind of like politics and whatnot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, but that's also like, well, that's also what I thought, just being like, you would think being a rapper, that kind of frees you from that, you know, because to be a rapper, rappers aren't like, we're not politically correct people. Like, I don't, especially like me coming from the way I grew up, like, I mean, political correctness, like, and that's another thing too, was I always struggle with, as far as like trying to appeal to this white audience, and also, you know, Portland in general, because Portland, let's be honest, Portland in general is a majority. This is, you know, anywhere you go to is white. Like, I'm used to just being one of the only sprinkle in the room. So that's just, and you get accustomed to that. Like, when you're the token, you kind of get groomed to, like, so when there's someone that looks at you that's in the room, you feel some way, because like, oh, it's either like, whoa, there's more than one, you know, because when you get used to that. In Portland, I feel like you do, because it's a thing here, right? And it's also just struggling with that in itself, because yeah, the politics is different. Like, I don't come, like, I mean, I was the first to go to college and actually get the degree. You know what I mean? And I went to a liberal university. So I got to learn this whole new coded language and like these terms that my family, other members of my family don't experience or don't have access to. And I remember like it was like my last year at WSU, and I was like very like fucking programmed into the whole like the labels, as far as like BIPOC and the whole pronoun thing. And I would come home and like try to like, you know, spill that out. And like my mom was like, don't bring that college shit over here. Like, we don't talk like that. And now, like, even as right now, like, I'm realizing like that's so true. Like, this whole style of politics, this ideology is not even accessible to most people. Like, you know, like I was like thinking like, oh, I'm in this whole realm, you know, being accepted among college educated people that's in a different social status, social class than what I'm accustomed to. But here I am having an invitation to it. I felt like it was just like, yeah, you know, yeah, but also like, no, like, you know, I started to see the difference, like why, you know, like why especially in college, like you see when you get introduced to this whole new world, and then you start learning about, you know, the complexities and the inequalities of about the whole world in general, and just how the system operates. Is just like, oh, I see it. I see why I'm here, you know. You know, light skin privilege, like that. Like that I'm very aware of. That exists. Color is like, just knowing how that operates and how that benefits me in these spaces, you know. So that proximity is like, yeah, you know, I'm talented, but I know for a fact, like I'm only here because I have assimilated to, or not just, it's not completely assimilated, but I know how to act around these spaces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult, like, just thing to navigate, I think, with the, you know, obviously it's not just Portland and Oregon, but that's kind of like, you know, context we're talking about, where anything you do like publicly as like a Black or brown person out here, the majority of the audience is just, the demographics is going to be a bunch of white people. And it's like, because it's not just like hip hop community, you know, it's nonprofits, protest community, business, to certain, you know, we're all seem to be like wrestling with this thing of like, in order to do a lot of the things we're trying to do, both for just our business and our lives, we're operating again in these public spaces. But how do we, you know, if most of the audience in the public space, and thus, you know, the currency of this public space is the attention, then how do we navigate when most of the people, you know, most of the consumers are white people who in most cases don't have that, like, either don't have that context for some of like the nuance and whatnot, or in some cases just, you know, they're just consuming, you know, in the most trying to think of a nice way to say it, but you know, they're just consuming. Like, it's literally just like, we are their, you know, we are their entertainment, and that, you know, it is what it is.
I mean, but that's also like, I mean, in a way they construct like thing about Portland is like when I compare to Chicago, like I said back in Chicago, like, yeah, it's very diverse, but it's also segregated. Like there's pockets of, you know, this, that, this, that, this, that. Where here, there are no pockets. There is no diversity. So it's the same thing. The same people, the same demographic, the same ideology, the same, you know, so it's like, and they don't get exposed to anything else. And they kept it that way for a very long, I mean, it's always been that way. It's never been any different. Like, when has Portland as a city ever been less than 70% white? They don't even know what that is. So they don't know. That's another thing too. I realized, like, you know, these folks just don't know. You know, they don't, and it's like, it's an education thing too. It's just like, but in a way, it's like, that's what it was set up to be.
Right.
You know, like, it's been set up that way since day one, whatever, back before 2000. Let's put it that way. Like, it's just been set up to be. And yeah, that was kind of like, that's just growing up, just in like, that's just how my mom was just growing up. Like, she would always say, don't go out there embarrassing me. Like, that's some, like, and when she says that, that means like, be in your best, be like presentation of yourself in front of people, because, and she would say that, especially living, you know, in a white neighborhood, like, because you know how these people think. And that's something my mom put me on game way before. Like I said, like, I knew who I was and what I had to do and what I had to you know, navigate school, navigate college, navigate the workplace. Like, you know, it's not the same with, you know, my peers, my white peers. No, I have to approach this way differently.
Right. And I mean, I think the flip side, and we're starting to see this even in a place like Oregon, where a lot of these white communities are realizing that they got to pick up this stuff, like, in order to be, you know, to operate in just like a globalized economy, you do have to be able to understand other people. You do have to be able to work with other people. You do have to be able to have some kind of understanding of not doing something that's going to get your company or yourself sued. And I've learned from like working, and around like DI industry stuff, where it's just like a lot of these people, if nothing else, like, they're not necessarily investing in diversity because they care about people. You like to think, you like to hope, but if we're just being real. But there is this sense of like, oh, well, if I want to work anywhere outside of like this Oregon existence, or, Oregon, Washington thing, like I gotta have some exposure to something else. So it's like there's this interesting like opportunity in a place like Oregon where the status quo isn't sustainable, you know, and it's an opportunity. It's the optimist in me says it's, opportunity to create something new, or like really like carve out something new. But, it's just yeah, like we're in this space that's kind of like in a period of transition. I'd like to think it's going to be a little bit faster than it is, but you know, I don't think that like this current thing is just like, I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think a lot of these communities can keep, they're going to hold on. Obviously, they're trying very hard. We see it every day, but it's just like, it's not like, yeah, it's just kind of like it's hitting that period where it's like something has to change. Like, never mind that, demographics are already changing, but like, it's just, you know, it's going to hit like a critical mass or something. Anyways, but that's another that's another long rant.
Right.
Speaking of kind of like, opening up lanes and whatnot, I was about to say last year, but 2020 I feel like the year that was lost. But like recently you had a video, not yours, where you were really I really just bring up a conversation about specifically like queer representation in hip hop. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Um, I mean, is there queer representation in hip hop? Not at the mainstream level.
Right.
So it's much easier to do at a much smaller scale, especially in a place like Portland where this is this is a very queer friendly town.
Hmm.
Given the politics and I mean also Portland's just gay. Like Portland's just gay. I think that's probably why I love it here and didn't go back to Chicago. Probably for that. I mean, yeah, like yeah, you could be gay out loud. You could be black gay and out loud here, you know? I mean, not that doesn't, not I'm not gonna say that it doesn't like it's not I'm not saying that it's not a not like you're not gonna experience any a violent situation that doesn't free you from it. But I feel like it's this because of the politics here, it's like you do get to be yourself freely as a queer person here because it is, the community is so strong here versus like a place like Chicago where it's like I grew up in a very like probably homophobic macho like hetero household. Even my mom, like to this day, me and my mom go like all that. We always like I always say like straight women, you know, if not homophobic, if not more, just as equally homophobic as as straight men. Um, so just like again, in Portland, just getting to know, just living here and just getting to know like the communities here. Obviously, I fit in more with the queer community here than any other community because there's like also it's just like and it sprinkles too. Like we're all just spaced out, so like the queer community just comes together, like and it just comes together automatically. And so that was just the crowd that I just fell into naturally, being exposed to so many like not just other queer people but also like the talent. Like I came across like whether it's hair, nails, dance, singing, like there's that's what really also was just like a driver for me, was just like being able to feel comfortable being my full authentic self with other people who are also comfortable being their full authentic self. And we all have similar interests, whether it's music, but it was all in the arts. And so that made it easier to collaborate, that made it easier to do projects, that made it easier to really tap into my creativity and my development, you know, because again, I'm still chasing this dream, right?
Mhm.
While also trying to do everything else in my life. So yeah, I felt, I mean, the queer community was like open arms. Like I just fell into it naturally, and just you know, my friend, like my whole like friend group, you know. So that was just like, okay, like, and I'm also, you know, start making friends with other artists, other musicians, whether they were rappers, but you know, some indie. That's another thing I had to learn. That's also like, I feel like it's a Portland thing, but it's like back in Chicago, like it was more like we were introduced to more of the mainstream stuff, whether it was like the mainstream stuff, like the CDs you order like from BMI with the 99 cents per CD, or it was more the like the juke. West Side was very on that juke scene. It was like the local music, like the biggest artist when I was a kid on West Side Chicago was Crucial Conflict. And like at that time, Chicago wasn't like, yeah, it was Twisted, but he was still in his early years. Do or Die was hot, but it wasn't like, we didn't have like a big, you know, mainstream artist. And too much to us in our eyes, that's like, if you're not mainstream, we ain't there yet. So, but fast forward back to Portland, like I was, you know, working, just being exposed to people just doing this independently, and not like my whole perception, like again, was changing, and I'm just trying to learn the game, right? And and also just also trying to fit in, just trying to fit in where I'm getting, right? Like the audience changed, but also I still need community. Like I still need my tribe, or else, you know, I might mess around and lose myself. So yeah, I just fell into the queer community just automatically. And it's so, I feel like it's small, but it's just like, it's also very, very artistic, very just like loud and proud. And I feel like that's me, like that's my personality. Like I'm very loud and proud, and so it just made sense. And then just also just the people like I met just on like, especially like the last 6 years, like I've met some incredible people, gay or straight. Like it's just yeah, I mean, Portland has a very vibrant queer community here. That's definitely something that I am grateful for. They like, yeah, like honestly, like if it wasn't for the queer community, I wouldn't be as popping. Like I wouldn't have been like, as far as like my shows, like they come out and support. And so yeah, that's yeah, so that's why I go hard. Like I go hard, like loud and proud, just yeah, and really take up space. Like it makes sense to do that because, you know, people like I mean, it took me a minute to come out because of the whole, you know, just trying to navigate the system, you know, trying to make my way up. How can I make my way up with the least problems possible, right? And so yeah, I didn't really like come out until like I was in college and at a liberal university, like, you know what I mean? So
Right.
like where it was like everybody was gay. No, not everybody, but like, you know what I mean? Like I was exposed to it, where, you know, back on Lawndale, that wasn't, you know, even with girls, that wasn't like, you know, I was presented for much of my childhood was the hetero, very misogynistic American ideals that we were taught from day one, right? So it wasn't till Portland that kind of, like, I ain't gonna lie, it's a bubble here, and it does expose you to a new way of thinking, and also like the freedom of to fully, you know, be yourself. And so yeah, like that's yeah, that's probably one of the best things about Portland is like, yeah, like, you know, there's this openness about it where, you know, people, as far as your sex, like as far as you, like if you're gay, they'll accept you, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I mean, the queer thing is figured out, but not the race thing yet, which is crazy. Like I feel like that was just figured out within the last 10 years, but we're still trying to figure the the race thing.
As you feel like that's kind of like trickling over in terms of like, especially like queer artists of color, like how that's translating business wise. It's like, you know, you talk about like people come out to the shows and whatnot. Like, do you feel like, because I just look at the scene, you know, one of the things when I got out of college and, you know, started working as a reporter and, you know, covering the local scene and whatnot, like you know, like I was aware of Cool Nuts and Lifesavers and whatnot when I was, you know, growing up and coming up on the radio, but I wasn't like into the scene as like a kid. I just like, I knew the artists who had like a national profile, right? So I didn't really get into it until, you know, coming out of college. And then, you know, one of the things I was struck by is like, damn, there's so much talent in Portland, you know? And even like you talk about like, I guess the like Black queer hip hop, like niche, if you will, like just, you know, again, so many like talented artists, you know, like you talk about, like I've obviously I'm not in New Orleans or a New Orleans historian, talk about like the New Orleans bounce scene, but when I think about like just like collection, you know, it's like there's something happening in Portland. And, you know, part of me is always, you know, there's always that discussion in Portland, like, well, who's gonna blow next? Who's gonna be the, you know, whatever. And it's just like, you got this collection of talent but is it really getting the recognition? Do people really realize I guess this is a weird meander to a question, but like, do people really, like, at least from your perspective, do you feel like people really realize what we have here?
I think people realize it. It's just they need validation from the outside, you know, in order to really like appreciate it. It's just like it's a basic human thing. Like we take things for granted every day. Every day. It's a basic, and there's just this bias with things that we are more familiar with and that we know that it's like it's something special, but we take it for granted anyway. The only time when I feel prideful about like Portland as a city is pride. Like it's like being gay. Like, you know, like that's why I feel like that's why the queer I feel like the queer rappers like are the most popping in my opinion, because there is this sense of identity. There is this proudness that is like, yes, we're, you know, there's this confidence that people automatically they just notice right away.
Yeah, no, I do think that, just again, as someone who grew up here, like that, the lack of pride, like I don't always know how to like put the exact words to it, but it's like it's noticeable. Like you can feel it, you know.
I felt that immediately as a teenager. Like, ooh, you know, that's why I always refer to, like, I'm glad I grew up in a household where it's like, you know, even with my mom, you know, she had me when she was 15, so it's like I feel like I grew up with her. But like, you know, it was just like this like she always, you know, it was just like this, she was all like this proudness of being who she was, like being so confident, so bold, and like, you know, and just being vocal about things, and not, you know, not like my mom was a very stubborn woman. Like it takes a lot for her to really you know, just not change, but also just you can't tell her about her. You know. And I feel like and also, but she also is open to different perspectives and just a different lens of, or in different ways of life. So but she always put me up on game as far as like, you know, don't be afraid to be you. Like, and I mean, for me, that was just kind of like, I think that's why, you know, much of I feel like the queer scene here is just like, you just have a bunch of people who just want to be themselves, you know, their full authentic selves. And that's, I think that's why we all gravitate to each other, because of that. And I feel like that's noticeable, like, because there's a sense of pride, you know. But other than that, you know, what are people prideful for?
Yeah, so, you know, we're talking about representation, and, you know, we kind of started the interview you're talking about just like having that family unit really, really kind of like instill that sense of just like, pride and identity and like how important that was. But like in terms of the larger conversation, because I can, for me, it feels like we haven't really like had it's like collectively, whether it's as a country, as a state, et cetera, just like talking about like, Black Latinx people. Like, what is that, So can you just talk about like how you've seen that conversation kind of evolve in recent years?
Oh, it's definitely evolved, but it's also definitely, as of now, it's the conversation is finally happening as far as at a mainstream level. Like I see it on social media. I see it on social media a lot. Like it, and I think that's great because it wasn't, I mean, obviously growing up, I mean, social media wasn't around when I was 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, I guess there was a few, but like I wasn't on social media
Mm.
like the way my 8-year-old nephew was on TikTok. Like it just wasn't, so like, and that's another thing too, is like accessibility. I mean, having access to things that you don't, I mean, I didn't have access to when I was younger, so you can there's ways to learn new things on the internet now. Like you can you get exposed to so much more things. So I think that's why the conversation is becoming more of a mainstream dialogue now. And also just learning the complexities of that, because again, we're not taught this K through 8 public school. I'm not sure. It's probably not taught in private school. So how do you learn? How do you learn? You're either gonna learn it from someone else or through the internet. And I think now that it's a mainstream conversation, people are just, this new enlightenment, like they have this whole new awareness of knowing that yeah, there is there is different identities, and it's not always centered on America.
Mhm.
And I think people are starting to finally realize that, and much to do it has to do is social media, because now you can scroll, watch videos, and it's easier to communicate with someone that is living on the other side of the world. Or now there's a lot of influencers that talks about these things, so people now are just much more exposed to information, and now they can educate themselves of knowing things that they're not taught or exposed to, because of inaccessibility of yeah. And they're definitely not like, I mean, that's another thing too, like with Portland, it's like a lot of people here are not interacting, they're interacting with the same, because of the lack of diversity, is your life experiences, I feel like, is limited. That makes
Mhm.
sense. um yeah, because if you're just interacting with um the same, if you're just having that same social experience, then how do you evolve as a person when the demographics change, or you're in an environment where it's completely different.
Yeah. So speaking of, what's to come, yeah, can you just talk about, what kind of like upcoming, we started this interview just kind of talking about, the recent video shoot, but like as far as upcoming projects, you know, things you got, coming down the pipe, can you just share a little bit of that for the viewers?
um I'm releasing some music that I've been sitting on for a while. Because of the pandemic, it was hard. Like it was just that whole not performing thing really really made an impact in my mental space here, because I feel like I was doing that a lot before the pandemic. And so because I wasn't performing as much, I was able to really just focus on creating music, and like and making songs that I could take my time on. That's one thing I had, was a lot of time, but also like being able to take my time and not rushing, or just like doing things off the fly has been very beneficial to me, because I feel like I'm finally making quality work to my expectations. Not saying like, you know, I feel like now I'm making, like, I'm creating music and content that is just like, wow, because I'm taking my time, I can be able to like really, you know, create quality stuff, and that I like, that I'm okay with presenting to the public eye. So yeah, like, and also just, and the pandemic also, it was a lot of self-reflecting. So I have this more this different mindset of just how I move just as a person and as an artist. Just learning, also learning, like just learning my vulnerabilities and how I could just like use that to my advantages rather than, you know, it blocking my blessings, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, like this past year I was able to really take my time on making music and just penning things that are like super real, but also like, okay, stuff to like, it's like this, I'm not just putting this out because it's within the moment, I'm putting this out because this is, I think this is timeless. I think this, like 5 years from now, this will still, it will still be something that people will gravitate to. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I'm really like trying to, you know, step up as far as like my sound, like what's my sound aesthetic. Like I was able to build, you know, quite the local presence, but obviously I want to, you know, get past the local scene, the regional scene, and really try to shoot for really expand my audience, and really try to get the sound outside of Portland. And much of that has to do with was like, you know, creating music that I think that it best reflects me in these current times. And I think I've been doing just that. But now with it being 2021 and then we're approaching summer, it's like now I'm gonna be able to like really go full speed, where the pandemic with the shutdowns and everything, you know, it just messed up a lot of moves. Like last year I was supposed to go to South by Southwest. I
Mhm.
had, man, I had so many things lined up that was gonna like take me to that next stage of my career. And then the pandemic just kind of ruined all that. So so now I'm just kind of like, man, I just want to release this new music and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I'm looking forward to hearing it. And yeah, Karma, thank you again for taking the time.